Hey everybody, Mungo Dark Matter here, and today I thought I'd discuss how to select a Chromebook, what features to choose, and how powerful of a Chromebook you might want to purchase. So I've been looking at Chromebooks mainly because I was curious what the cheapest Chromebook you could buy would be, and I've always been kind of fascinated with what the cheapest device would be that would be like a laptop that you could carry around that had a keyboard and you could type, because I'm interested in writing. And so you buy a Chromebook, say for $70, and you spill coffee on it at the coffee shop while you're typing, you just buy a new one, right? But if you have a $2,000 MacBook and you spill coffee on it, well, then you cry a couple of days, don't you? So anyway, I looked at Chromebooks and I noticed the prices were anywhere from $60 to $70 to up to $60 or $600 to $700 or more dollars. So this kind of made me a little more curious about what the specs are, because I didn't know initially what specs, how they compared to a regular laptop. And when I looked at some of these specs, like 2 gigabytes of RAM and 16 gigabytes of storage, I thought, wow, that's pretty low. It turns out you don't probably need as much as you would think on a Chromebook, because a Chromebook runs most of the stuff off of the web. However, now they can run Android applications, which kind of throws a wrench into the whole works. So anyway, let's start out with some of the basics. The first thing I would make sure of if you're buying a Chromebook is that it has a touch screen. And the reason you should get a Chromebook with a touch screen is because now they do run Android applications, and most Android applications are designed to be run on a tablet or a phone and with a touch screen. So if you have a touch screen, it's going to work out a lot better for you if you're going to use Android applications. If you're not interested in that, maybe you don't really need a touchscreen, but that's one thing I would get, and that kind of future-proofs your use of it too, in case later you decide you want to use Android applications. The next thing is you want to make sure the tablet actually runs Android applications if you intend to run them or intend to run them in the future. Most newer Chromebooks since 2017 will run Android applications because they have access to the Google Play Store, and that's the primary thing to get them to run Android applications. And older ones may not run Android, and there may be still some that don't run Android. So it might be something you want to check on the specs. It will usually say in the specs if it will run Android or not, but that's one key thing that you want to look at. But if it's a newer one, and it's a major brand, like if it's an Acer or a Lenovo, I know both of those run Android apps. So that's another thing you want to look at. So you can run Android apps, and you've got a touch screen. So there's a third thing that's kind of an optional thing that you want to consider. But you may want to consider getting what's called a convertible or a 2-in-1 laptop, which basically means you can fold the keyboard back behind it and make it into a laptop, or you can take the keyboard totally off of the screen, so you have actually a tablet. So that might be something that you want to look into if you want to use the Chromebook as a tablet and as a laptop. So that really depends on your use. But those are three things that I would weigh heavily on getting a Chromebook, unless you just want a really cheap basic one. Then you don't really have to worry about that if you don't think you're going to use any of those things. If you're just doing email and browsing the web, that may not be a consideration for you. So we've got these features so that we can run Android apps. Now when we come to the subject of how powerful of one do you need, as I mentioned, the specs on these things are pretty low. The standard specs are either 2 or 4 gigabytes of RAM and either 16 or 32 gigabytes of storage, which isn't a lot. And if you were running Windows, I think you'd be out of luck. I'm not even sure. I think maybe technically it runs on that, but you don't want to ever have a laptop or a computer running on too low of memory. The thing also to consider is Chromebooks are like tablets and like smartphones in the fact that you can't upgrade the memory and you can't upgrade the storage in them, or at least most of them. There may be a few out there that you can, but they're basically, when they make a Chromebook or a tablet or an iPhone, they're trying to make it as compact as possible and as cheap as possible. So they don't want to spend the money or the space on making sockets in it so that you can change the memory or change the battery or change the amount of storage in it. To do that would make the device thicker, a little larger, and a little more expensive. So that's why they don't allow you to do that in these devices. Plus, it also helps them because if you run out of memory and space, you have to upgrade, right? But there's also a cost and form factor consideration in that when they build them. So you want to get a Chromebook that's going to last you a while, or if you want to get one that lasts you a while, you want to go up towards the upper end. I would recommend definitely getting the 4 gigabytes of RAM or more. Some of them actually have more, like 8 now, but those tend to be upper end ones. And if you're not in, if you're not looking to buy a really upper end one, probably 4 gigabytes is what you're going to end up with. And I'd probably try to go with a 32 on the storage as well. Some of them you may be able to get 64 gigabytes, depending on what your cost range is. I would go for the most storage you could get on them. If you can get 64, great. But if you get 32 gigabytes, that's towards the upper end of what most of them have available. So those are some considerations. The final thing would be what cost range you're in, and if you're in a lower cost range, you might have to cut back on some of those features. If you're up in the higher range, you can actually up some of those features, perhaps. Touchscreen is gonna cost you a little bit more. The lowest end one that you can probably get with a touchscreen is probably around $150. You get one without a touchscreen, you can go down to I've seen them for $60 or $70 and used maybe even a little bit less. Those are really low end, though. I'm not sure I would go with those unless you just needed something that was really cheap and could just do some basic things. So I would probably stick in the $150 to $250 price range for a Chromebook, because I think you're going to get a pretty good deal at that. Make sure you get 4 gigabytes of memory, and try to get 32 or 64 gigabytes of storage. 64 might be a little harder to find. 32 should be pretty easy to find. I'm Mungo Dark Matters, and this has been Dark Matters. And whatever you do, enjoy the day, and I will see you soon.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.